it. And
All right, there we go.
hi, and welcome to the recording with Timo and Hunter. We're taking a look at doing some GitLab Terraform Provider resource. There's an MR that kind of is instructive for like how to create your first resources, and we're kind of trying to go through that. I don't have anything set up for local development around this, so that's where we're starting.
Sounds good. Well, so your GDK is running. Did you check?
Yeah, let's see if it
So
well,
for the recording,
compiled with problems.
what we tried to do is set up a GitLab instance. But we're like Hunter was doing some development, so GDK is in the middle of migrations and whatnot, and we are still starting the provider specific GitLab instance within a Docker container, but this takes a while on an M1 Mac because of emulation and stuff. So
I'm going to try when I run into problems on the front end, I found this in a Slack thread somewhere to run yarn GDK restart Webpack, GDK restart Rails, and so I've got that as my kind of go-to when I run into an issue here. So we'll give that a. Oh, that was quick.
I think your page is
And hey, oh well, just refresh and see.
Yeah, it probably didn't even reload. It's probably still booting the instance because you restarted Rails now.
Yeah, it probably is, but it looked like it. I think the yarn and restart Webpack had actually fixed it. I think I should probably next time just try starting.
Yeah.
Trying those because it looked like the page had done its thing. Okay, so yeah, we can talk about what we want to get through. Should I pull up that MR?
Yeah, let's do this. Let's see what's in there. And then I think like one of the first steps would be to figure out what we'd like to work on, like what resource, what data source we want to implement.
Okay, so I'm going to start by going to the Terraform Provider repository, and it should be an MR on this repo, right?
It's from Patrick, so shout out to Patrick if you're ever gonna see this.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I think it's this draft create a how-to guide for creating your first resource.
And it's still in draft, so we are looking at the work in progress documents here. So
great. So while we're before we dive into that, let me see. Did I really just need to click the X on that? Is that all I needed to do? I'm just gonna copy the GDK password real quick. Sign in and see if we're able to. We'll let that run its course. So yeah, the draft document. So let's take a look real quick. Okay, so there's no like a description yet on here, but I think that this is basically
there's an issue reference, and basically the goal of this document is to provide resources for how to write your first resource, right? It should be a guide for contributors, community contributors, even team members, right? Like someone who has never contributed to the provider. Yeah, and the goal of the trigger for this was that we want to increase the community contributions and contributions in general to the provider. And having good documentation is one way to make it easier to onboard.
Yeah, I think that's a great concept, and I'm a very good candidate to test this out because I haven't made any contributions yet and have a low level of context. I'm not a Terraform expert, so this will all be, I think, a good setup here. So, all right, it looks like we got. It looks like we just need to keep pressing X, but otherwise we're fine. It looks like everything's loaded up, and no, let's check
we
on
can
the
test against this afterwards.
Okay, so I guess this didn't matter. We were running this command you see up here, the make test account up service. That's still running. All right, what's our first step, Timo?
Yeah, I suggest you go to the MR again, and
Okay.
then let's open this in the branch, in the source branch. So if you scroll to the top, there is a link, right? Requested to merge, blah blah blah. Right?
Oh, you want to click this?
Yes, and then we can open the markdown file. I guess this is easiest, and I think it's in the docs folder. And there's a guides folder. Okay, it's not here. No, it's
not
not.
this. Okay. Let's go back one.
Here we have development, maybe. Yes, this one.
All right. I'll close the sidebar here. I just realized there was a hide sidebar button. So, all right, is this where we want to be? Okay, so we got creating a new resource using the Terraform plugin framework. And I'm going to bump up the font size just a little bit because I forgot to bring my glasses down here. All right, this tutorial is meant to help new contributors out when creating a new resource. It will walk through a step-by-step guide of creating a new resource using the Terraform Provider framework.
Yeah, maybe a word on that. So
Sure.
there has been an SDK. It was called Terraform Plugin SDK, I think, and it was basically the way how to implement the Terraform provider. It takes care of communication to Terraform, and you just get hooks, and you need to provide your schema for your resources.
Okay.
But since a few months, there has been this Terraform provider framework, which is just a new way of writing your resource.
Okay. I'll open that in another tab, but
yeah,
I can check out more of that in detail.
Yeah, they have good resources and tutorials themselves of how to write a resource and stuff. So the goal here is to kind of make it opinionated for the GitLab provider.
Gotcha.
And yeah, the other one should just, can be referenced here for completeness sake. And
Cool.
yeah, they're very Terraform specific stuff. Good.
Right. So this guide will assume that development environment has already been set up by following the developing the provider section. Okay, so I kind of did some of that. If I go I want to leave this tabs open. I'm just gonna go to the main Terraform provider again and go to the contributing and see real quick. I believe this is what
yeah, they're getting started right here.
So okay. Should I go through this now or should I?
No. We were all good.
Okay.
The stuff in here may matter later for there's some guidelines, as you can see there at the bottom of the page, which give some guidelines of decisions we'd make. And I think that the guide which Patrick wrote should actually already adhere to these guidelines. So if you follow the guide and implement stuff the same way in your new resource, I think you should be good to go.
I wonder if the concern in MR was more about this local environment piece, because there's kind of almost this seems like a best practices and stuff up above this. But I've done this section. I've git cloned.
Yes.
I seeded into it. I did the make build. I also ran a couple of commands that you slacked to me that I don't see on here, like the Docker compose pull to get all the images. And then this other command that's running in the terminal in the background.
The Docker compose pull, it's not something you necessarily need to do. I just told you to do this so we don't lose time with downloading Docker images, which we now anyway lose. But
for whatever it's worth, it didn't take too long for me on my connection. It took like a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we need to do any of the other?
No, we do not.
Okay, gotcha. So I think for anyone following along, probably,
I think below there's the testing section with the make test ack up and everything. If you scroll further down, like here running tests, and there's like a run against GitLab Docker Compose. So here are the commands that you run and are running right now.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And we may choose to run it against GDK using this option 2 there, where we will run make test ack and then provide the GDK token, the base URL for GDK, and they will run the acceptance tests against that instance.
Okay. Yeah, and that is one other step that's mentioned in here that I did take. I went into my email where, like, if the normal onboarding, or not normal, but the onboarding steps that were provided when I was onboarding had GitLab license steps, that license was just in my email. So I created that file in the provider directory and added the license to that text file. But it will yell at you if you don't have it. It'll tell you to do it. So alrighty. So I think that seems cool. So that gets us through here. And so now we're actually to creating a new resource using the Terraform plugin framework. So yeah, that's where we are. So step 1, understand the API from GitLab. And this says when creating a new resource, the GitLab Terraform Provider follows the Terraform Provider best practices whenever possible. This means that a new resource meets a couple of criteria. One resource aligns as closely to one set of CRUD APIs as possible. The attributes of the resource align with the attributes of the underlying APIs. For this example, the resource GitLab application resource will be used as a step-by-step example. This resource aligns to the applications API as exposed by GitLab. When creating a resource, first ensure the relevant APIs are present in GitLab. If it's not clear whether an API exists for a resource, create an issue. Okay, so use the API that's provided. Are we talking, when we say CRUD, are we talking the REST API specifically, and not like there's no GraphQL component to this? It's all on the REST API.
The majority, I mean, every resource and data source except of one is using the REST API. And the reason for this is that Terraform itself uses CRUD hooks for you. So in a resource, you implement a create, an update, a read, and a delete.
Okay.
So even that we can use GraphQL in these CRUD hooks of Terraform, we don't really profit from GraphQL, because in Terraform, you usually want all the attributes, right? Anyways, you always want to read all the attributes. There's no point in, from a client side, to construct our own queries. This doesn't make any sense.
Cool.
So if there's a REST API, we prefer it. If there is not, we can use the GraphQL API.
Okay, that's cool to know. So I think we're good on step 1. All right. Create the resource struct. In the Terraform plugin framework, each resource is represented by a struct that implements one or more interfaces. For the sake of keeping this tutorial simple, these interfaces won't be covered in detail. However, creating the resource struct will be the first step in creating a new resource. Each resource is created with its own Go file, named like this. In this case, resource GitLab application.go. All right, so creating the struct isn't enough to ensure the interfaces are met, so error handling reasons block the top of the... We can add something to that later.
What happened there.
All right, so so as a kind of like Terraform newbie, I'm not sure, am I supposed to go ahead and create a new Go file here and copy this contents in? Is that what we want? And
yeah, that's one way we could go about this, but as it's written there in the step 1, you can also, like, what I usually do is just use an existing resource and just copy and paste it to get the bootstrap template.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's like, if we should actually incorporate this into the tutorial here, or maybe even provide like an empty resource kind of things as a doc, that you can copy and paste the entire thing. Because if you just copy and paste this struct into a Go file, this doesn't give you anything, right?
Right.
This doesn't help. So
yeah, maybe a link to a one file or something, or something, if there's an easy.
yeah, the GitLab application has, above there is a link to the Go file which you can use, but it's not like very.
Okay, yeah. This always throws me off. This is just a me thing though. When it's code and it's a link, I always fail to realize that it's actually a link.
Okay, which is not there.
Okay, but it should just be in the
yeah, it should be there
in this repository in the resource application Go.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back over here, and no, that's not really what I wanted. I want to go to the main part
that's
of the
good.
repo.
It was okay. Now also all the source code of the resources, they live in the internal provider folder. And something is special here. So you can see that there's an SDK folder. You don't need to open it, but there's an SDK folder. And if you scroll down, you also see resources in here, or Go files, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the I told you in the beginning that there has been this Terraform plugin SDK, which was the way to implement resources. And now there is this plugin framework, which is what we use nowadays. And these resources are here in the internal provider. So we split that to kind of know what is implemented with what. And we can gradually move SDK resources into other resources, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So here you see there's tons of resources and data sources.
And and there is a benefit, you're saying, to eventually migrating these to use the new framework, and right now they're just kind of arbitrarily almost being like, hey, the new ones are top level and the SDK ones are in here.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And you also shouldn't use the SDK package from within any other package.
Okay.
Go
is that
back.
something that will be in these resources here? SDK package.
Yeah, the UDC package SDK. So
okay, yeah.
For example, from the test package, you shouldn't use the SDK package, or from the top level resources, you shouldn't use any helper functions from the SDK.
Okay. And so that would be, I would expect, I go into resource GitLab application, and there's no SDK in here. Package provider. Okay.
And now if you scroll down, we can quickly check if the struct is there that the tutorial wrote about, and we have it there on line 40 something. 40.
Yeah. This.
And yeah, this is the main type we have for the resource. And then you see on line 63 how there is a couple of functions being implemented for that type. So we have a schema, which gives us a schema. And the schema means it defines which attributes are available for this resource. So if you scroll down, you see there how there's an attributes map kind of thing, and there's an ID, there's a name. So these are all attributes you can set on this resource.
Oh, I see. It's all part of the same function.
Yes. So this function. So how these hooks are being structured is, if you go to the topic to the declaration of the function here, line 63. Line 63.
Oh, sorry.
Or also this one, it doesn't matter. Yeah, here you see their first argument is a context.
Yeah.
So that's always the first argument, and then you get a request, which is the input for whatever the hook is in this. For this, it wants to create a schema, and the response here is where you assign stuff. It's you assign a new schema in the response. And for the create hook, you would assign state there, for example. but we'll see that later. But if you now scroll down, we'll see the other hooks. Like there is a configure here, which we can get to later. That's not too important right now. It always looks the same. But there's the create, for example, on line 100.
Yeah, okay.
And you see the same kind of structure of the arguments here for the hook, right?
Right. You always have the context, request, and then the response.
Yes. And in this case, in the request, you basically get the plan, that's like the Terraform plan you get in the request. And in the response, you set errors, you set the state, and so on. Right? Okay. Everything that results, the output is in the response, and the request is just what's getting in. And here you also see the beginning of the CRUD thingy, right? You have to create.
Right.
And if you scroll down, you will see a read. There's an update, which for this resource, for example, doesn't make any sense, because there is resources which from a GitLab API perspective, you cannot update. They need to be recreated. So basically what an update is then, like if as a user, if you change an attribute, you still want to update, right? And what it does, it just does a delete and then a create. So it recreates the resource.
Right. That makes sense. So to the user, it may still look like they're doing an update, but if you actually call it update on this, you're going to get
the user will see in the plan that it is in fact a delete and a create. So they'll be not notified about this.
Yeah. I think that seems like that would be expected in a Terraform context, that you would be just blowing everything away and starting over. Okay, and delete. Cool. And then we've got some import state, apply application model, or sorry, application model to state. Alrighty. So cool.
Yeah, so I think the first, or it would be nice if we go through the tutorial that we know what we are actually want to implement, right? That we look for an issue that contains a request for a new resource. And then we take that as an example and basically walk our way through implementing that using the guide. What do you think?
That sounds good.
Okay, so yeah, we can go and open the issues in that repo.
All right, so we want the issues in
Terraform Provider. Yes, and also good to know here is that for the feature label, we defined some additional ones in here in that repo. So there's a feature : new resource, which you can filter for.
Okay, label is
yes, and then
feature :
and then new and
resource.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's give it a whirl.
Yes, so this will be, I think this will be one of the biggest struggles actually, because we need to find something that is kind of easy to implement for the sake of this, what we want to achieve. And the thing is, we not only depend on the GitLab API, but we also depend on a Go library to talk to the GitLab API, which is called Go GitLab. And this needs to implement that as well, right?
Okay.
So, yeah. So what we could do, I mean, I'm just seeing there the implement GitLab project issue link. Can you open that real quick?
Yeah, implement GitLab project issue link. Let's open this one.
I think Adriano here, he's also a GitLab team member. Cool. I don't know. Or boss, I don't know. There is quite a discussion, I think, in here regarding how to achieve that. But if you scroll to the bottom, I think we came to the conclusion what to do.
I wonder if this seems like, okay, just to confirm, resource would fit your needs for now. Adriana says yes.
There was one more comment, right? At the very bottom. Okay. No, then I think you can scroll up to my actual proposal.
Yeah, let's
which I
see.
think
Is this you
yes,
here?
this is yeah.
Here,
So
okay, so you said, I think if we do something like that, we miss. Okay, what would you think about this is where your proposal starts, I think. What would you think about a conventional GitLab project issue link resource? And here, if I'm understanding this correctly, this is a resource struct, and you're using the fields that would be found in the REST API. Is that
yeah,
correct?
so this is Terraform code here, and you see the first resource there is the GitLab project issue, which doesn't really matter. But then if you scroll down in here, you will eventually see now at the very bottom, you see a GitLab issue link. And that thing, yeah, it's the example is a little bit more complex here because there's a for each in there. You see that for each,
Yeah.
which is basically telling that you should create once per item there one of these resources. And it basically is a way to just like the resource in a simple example would just have a project and an issue attribute. And it would have a target project and a target issue. And what that means is it links the project, the issue to the target issue, right? And the issue is identified via project and an issue ID. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then like that was one proposal, what to do. And the second one was that we'd have one resource called GitLab project issue links. So it's kind of plural. And then you can define all your links in there.
Gotcha. And each link is basically a hash that has a target project ID key and a target issue ID key. I mean,
but the problem of the one with the plural is that the entity in the API is an issue link and it's not an issue links. And we want we saw in these principles that we want to reflect the API resources in Terraform.
Right.
And this is like one thing. And the other thing is that if we do this with the links list, then this would mean that in Terraform, we want to manage all the links. Because otherwise, like what if I create another link outside of Terraform? It would then, when you're on Terraform again, it would detect a drift. Because now of this links list, you would have an additional one because I created one out of bound, right? Which is probably not what you want, because in Terraform, you only wanted to manage these links here, but not any links you do for that issue, right? So that's why I think the first approach is what we should prefer.
Maybe I'm a little confused, but isn't it still hard coded in here as well? I mean, you've got these specific things.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but not really, because this for each, it still basically creates one resource per link, and all the issue links that are not managed by Terraform won't interfere with our Terraform because we just don't know of them. But if we have the syntax like in the second example with the links, it kind of semantically means that the issue there, which is referenced in project issue, like outside of the links field, that issue should link to only the ones which are in the links list, which it possibly shouldn't, or probably shouldn't, because a user may create an issue link outside of Terraform And we
Okay,
don't
and so
want
you're
to
saying that
forget
just
about this.
you're saying like this syntax doesn't have the same semantic meaning, so it doesn't
Yes.
suggest the same thing that this does. Okay,
Exactly.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, well then I think, it would be this one.
So I think the first thing we now need to do is check if the GitLab client, Go GitLab, supports that. And we still have a way to go until we can implement something, but let's do this, right? Because it's what we usually do when we develop in the provider. We usually need to check the API, right?
Yeah, I think that, given that we have about 7 to 10 minutes left or so,
Yes.
I think it would make a lot of sense to me as the person kind of understanding this stuff for the first time to go take a look at that API and then stop this video and this kind of be like the first video in what could possibly be like a 2-part or 3-part thing. And then the next one, it could focus on the actual development. And that way also it'd be nice if someone is already familiar with the whole setup and everything, they can kind of probably just skip this video and jump straight into like, hey, we're going to create this resource. So, all right. So where do I head for
let's
API?
let's do like, let's find the API real quick. And for that, you can usually just Google GitLab issues links API, and that will get you to documentation.
Issues and links API.
Yes. So here.
Okay. This is links. Is that what we want?
Yeah, this is okay because the API, if it's like, most of the APIs, they have a list endpoint. The REST APIs, right? You call links. And then there is a get API for this, which is like links/issue link ID. And then there is a create on the links, and then there's a delete and an update, right?
Right. And we wanted the list, right?
We don't actually need the list. That's the only one we don't need because we don't want to know all the issue links. We just want our resource will manage a single issue link. And this starts by creating an issue link, reading the issue link, and deleting the issue link. There's no update of the issue link.
Do we want to scroll to the create an issue link?
Yes. So that's basically what we will call in the create hook, all right? And we would provide it the ID and issue ID. So that the first 2 attributes here in the table, they are in the URL, right? If you see the post URL in the snippet above the table, there's like above the table, not below. No. Above the table. Above the table.
Oh, above this table. Okay, I see.
Yes. There's like a /projects ID issues issue links ID issue ID links, and the ID and the issue ID are what we need for the URL. These are going to be, if you go back to the issue.
Oh, sorry. Back to the
issue we were looking at before. I'll just want to show you how it looks like how it maps to Terraform. So if you scroll down here again to our example, here you see the project and the issue. Yes, those two fields, they map to the project ID and the issue ID that you've seen in the documentation table before. And the target project ID and the target issue IID, those link to the other 2 attributes in the table.
I see ID, issue IID, and then the target and target.
And there's an additional one which in the issue wasn't mentioned, which is the link type, which we should also support.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So this makes a lot of sense. So and I think just like for me tying it back to that when we had looked more closely at the Go code and the hooks and like the create hook is where we'll also be bringing in some of this. So we'll need it in the yeah, it makes sense.
And like one more thing to quickly look at is the Go GitLab library. So let's do this. Can you open a new tab? I will, and then it's github.com. .com/ and then XANCY set, sorry, not C.
Oh.
Set Y / go -GitLab.
Type the word minus. All right.
That's it. So
Alrighty.
that's our dependency we need. And then on this page, you can just search for issue links. There is Go files, which are usually matching to the API. I think it's issue links. Yes. So there's this Go file, and if you open it, and scroll down, you will find the API endpoints to call if it's supported. So here we have the list issue relations. There's the get issue link. There's probably a get create issue link. So here, create issue link. So this is what we need, right? If this is supported in Go GitLab, it's already pretty cool because we can just focus on the provider development and don't need to first make a contribution in Go GitLab, wait for a release, include that release, and so on.
Okay. So this hook already exists.
Yes, but this is in Go GitLab. So we are supposed to call this in the Terraform Provider hook, right?
Right. But when I'm here, when I go back to here, I just wanted to quickly go quickly go to sorry, my dogs are given a hard time out there. All right, let's see. I wanted to go back to the what's it called?
The application.
Just the repo real quick, and I wanted to look at some of that. There's just like my brain wants to confirm something. We go back in here, and then we have these top level things.
Yes.
These Go files. We looked at test application Go, and I'm seeing that in here we were defining like a schema, but we were also defining the hooks. So is this because this stuff doesn't exist in Go GitLab?
No. So here on line 154, we are basically constructing the API parameters, and then on line 165, we are actually calling the API using Go GitLab. So this is Go GitLab here, that line, it calls into Go GitLab. And here, basically, we would do like create issue link instead. But then all these things around is like reading out the attributes from Terraform. And then after the API call is like writing everything into state and these kind of things. So these resources usually are pretty simple, except sometimes they aren't, and you need to, like, I don't know, wait for side effects to happen and whatnot. So yeah. Yes, I also need to jump. So yeah, let's stop here and we will do a second part.